I mean, it's one of the first of its kind. And of course, we have the Nightmare on Elm Street Nintendo cartridge, which has been reviewed several times online, and even by the angry video game nerd himself. And the game is hard. All these old NES games are hard. And I mean, these early horror games were really tough, and like, let's just say the company that made them is renowned for making some of the hardest, most crazy games out there. And of course, we also have the as another Friday the 13th based thing. This is the Friday the 13th Nintendo cartridge. Again, hard game, confusing, hard to navigate, but again, one of the first of its kind, very novel. And not to mention, even before these particular games came out, on the Atari, there were a couple of horror games that Wizard Video came out with. One was, of course, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they also made a game of Halloween, which, again, the Angry Video Game Nerds reviewed. I definitely recommend you hop over to cinemassacre.com and check out his horror video game reviews. He's a very talented, I'm going to call him a filmmaker because that's what he really is. He's a filmmaker, and he does these crazy video game reviews on the side. And again, I'm kind of borrowing from what he does here because I'm such a fan of his work, and you know, I think more people need to take a look back at some of these old titles and remember what it was all about back then, and how hard games used to be back then, and well, how the technology has changed over the years. And now I'm going to kind of go away from that for a second, and I'm going to start talking about vampires, and more specifically Vampire Hunter D. It's an anime movie the first one's from the 80s, I believe. It doesn't really say on the back. 85. It's from 1985, and it's a great old school anime movie about the story really centers around a young hunter, werewolf hunter, and she ends up getting bit by a vampire, and this vampire wants to court her. But they're trying to find a vampire hunter that will slay this vampire that's trying to court her and steal her away from her family. They find a vampire hunter, a Dunpeel hunter known as D, and a Dunpeel is a half man, half vampire. So he's well equipped to hunt vampires since he's half vampire himself. Great movie, and it actually, the first one's great. I love it. It's classic anime, but I think the sequel by far surpasses it. It's one of those few sequels that's actually better than the original, just because the animation style's gotten better, but the storyline's cool, and the storyline focuses more on D himself. Or D's in the storyline a little more. It's a little more D-centric. But there's other characters in it, and it focuses on them as well. This came out in 2001, and on home video at least, and it's a great movie. I really enjoy it. And then there's also an art book. There's a couple art books out about Vampire Hunter D. This one's the artwork from the sequel, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and it's got this a half-price book for like $4, and it's just little quick art snippets from the movie. Nothing really super spectacular inside. I mean, it's cool to thumb through and whatnot. It's a cool book. I like it because it's small, it's hardbound, and it's got the cool cross on the front and the shiny print. On the back, it's got shiny. It's all shiny. It's the ooh shiny factor, but it's a cool book. They have a much bigger art book that's the more classic style from the first movie, and it's really big and really expensive. And I would like to buy it, but there's other things that I need to spend my money on aside from a big expensive art book. But if I had the money to spend on it, I would definitely buy it. And another book that's non-Vampire Hunter D related, but vampire related, is and this is kind of a kid's book, but it's really neat, Vampire Hunter's Handbook. And it's a little book for kids that kind of has like what vampires are about, how to kill a vampire and stuff like that. It's like if you want to be pint-sized Van Helsing, you can go out. There's even like an oath in the back and an identification page that a kid could fill out if they're so inclined to. But yeah, it's a great book, and the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because I'm going to talk about the Castlevania franchise now. going back to the Nintendo Entertainment System, Castlevania was one of the first horror titles for the Nintendo. And it's lasted even through today. It's one of the best horror franchises in all of, in my opinion, ever. That's the first Castlevania game. And they followed it up with Simon's Quest, which is a direct sequel. And again, this is the first Castlevania to adapt the non-linear style. It's more of a kind of a role-playing or a quest game where you have to go collect hearts and buy items and go find the pieces of Dracula that have been scattered throughout the land and get them together and defeat him one final time to remove the curse that's been placed on Simon that's killing him. And last in the NES trilogy, you have Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, which this game features other characters you can play as. And this, well, the main character of the first two games, I should say, is Simon Belmont. And this game's actually a prequel where you play his ancestor, Trevor Belmont. And there's actually a few other characters that you can play. And those characters are Grant Dynasty, which he is a pirate who has a grudge against Dracula, I think because he killed his family members. And Sypha, which she's a witch or a sorceress for the church. And my favorite character, Alucard, who's Dracula's half-human, half-vampire son, which Alucard and Dee are essentially the same character, which is kind of why I segued into this topic by talking about Vampire Hunter D. But Alucard's a cool character, and of course the Belmonts are great, and we have, unfortunately this cartridge is a dud. It used to work, but now it's dead for whatever reason. Tried cleaning it, no luck. Luckily, all these games are now available in the Wii Virtual Console, so I just bought a points card and bought it that way so I can go back and enjoy it whenever I want. And there's some other Castlevania games that I'm going to show you here in just a moment, and I'm gonna have to show you on screen because they're titles that are downloaded onto systems. I don't have a physical copy to show you. So I'm going to show you just basically like the title screens of some of these, and I'm going to show you those here now. I'm not actually going to get into the game because I'm actually in the process of a game right now, but this is Super Castlevania 4, and this was the game that came out on the first Castlevania game to come out on the Super Nintendo after Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. And there was only one other game that was released on the Super Nintendo, and it was a port of Devil's Castle Dracula X Rondo of Blood, which was the Japanese title on I think it was called the PC Engine. And Dracula X on Super Nintendo is often seen as a really bad port of the game, and now you can get the full game on the PSP as well as a portable version of Symphony of the Night for about $20 at this point because it's the greatest hits. And Castlevania 4 is a great Super Nintendo game. Graphics are great, sound is great, the gameplay is great. This is the only Castlevania where you can whip in 8 directions. Up, down, diagonal, up, diagonal, front and back. You can moonwalk, you can crouch. And I think those are features that are severely lacking in even today's Castlevania, that kind of control over the character. And I'd be interested to see a new Castlevania where that kind of control is re-implemented, and I think it would enhance the gaming experience. And the next game that I'm going to show you is Castlevania Adventure Rebirth, which is kind of a remake of one of the Game Boy titles. And I'm going to actually show you going into this because it's actually really cool. I'm actually going to show you a little bit of the game also. One thing I must say that I'm disappointed in, being that this is the Wii, is a lack of the Castlevania arcade game ported to the Wii, because the arcade game is tailor-made for the Wii, because in the arcade game there's a little remote control whip that you use to attack enemies, and I think that's tailor-made for the Wii.